There is a type of calm that isn't peace, it's survival. Why do some people remain serene when everything falls apart? Why do they never lose control, even when they're breaking inside? Is it strength, or is it something deeper? And what if that admirable calm were actually a learned response to emotional danger? Today we are going to discover what lies behind that unshakable serenity that many call a virtue, but that was born as a defense. Many people believe that their calm is part of their personality, that they were simply born that way, balanced, rational, difficult to rattle. But the truth usually begins long before anyone noticed that serenity. You didn't learn to be calm because the world was safe. You learned to be calm because it wasn't. In childhood, when the emotional environment is unstable, the child quickly understands that expressing too much can make things worse. Maybe there was shouting, maybe cold silences, maybe sadness, addiction, constant stress, or an unpredictable figure whose reaction was never clear. In that environment, crying didn't always bring comfort. Sometimes it brought more tension, and the child learns. They learn that showing fear can trigger rage, that crying can lead to rejection, that getting angry can result in punishment. So they begin to self-regulate, not because they are ready to do so, but because it is necessary. While other children learn to identify emotions, you learn to contain them. While others were comforted, you became the one who didn't cause problems. Your face became neutral, your voice steady, your body still. Calm became a strategy. It wasn't inner peace, it was vigilance. It was observing every tone of voice, every gesture, every change in the environment to anticipate emotional danger. It was learning that control guaranteed stability. With time, that strategy became an identity. People started to admire it. You're so strong. You never get upset. You always know what to do. And you accepted that role. But deep down, that calm was born from a silent conclusion. Feeling too much was risky. You didn't choose to be the strong one. You learned that it was the only way to stay safe. In a healthy childhood, emotional regulation is not learned in solitude. It is learned through accompaniment. When a child falls and cries, an adult holds them, calms them, and transmits something essential. This will pass. You are safe. That process is called co-regulation. It is the foundation upon which the nervous system learns that distress is temporary and that support exists. But when the environment is chaotic or emotionally unpredictable, something different happens. If the adult is overwhelmed by their own rage, sadness, addiction, or constant stress, the child's emotions find no containment. Sometimes they even become a threat to the adult's stability. The implicit message is clear. Don't feel so much. Don't be a burden. Don't complicate things more. And the child's brain adapts. The amygdala, in charge of detecting threats, begins to associate emotional expression with danger. Not physical danger, but relational danger. Rejection, shouting, distance, disapproval. Every gesture, every prolonged silence, every change in tone becomes a signal that must be interpreted quickly. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, responsible for control and regulation, becomes overactive. But not to process emotions, but to suppress them, to stop the crying before it comes out, to contain the rage, to shut down the fear. When fighting or fleeing are not possible options, because you can't face your caregiver or escape from them. The nervous system resorts to another strategy, freezing. It is the immobilization response. The emotion flattens. The body stays still. The mind observes from a distance. It's not that you don't feel, it's that your system learned to disconnect to survive. With time, this adaptation becomes automatic. Emotional hyperregulation is established as the norm. From the outside, it looks like maturity. From the inside, it is constant vigilance. Your brain didn't fail. It did exactly what it needed to do to protect you in an unpredictable environment. The problem is that what was useful in childhood can become a barrier in adulthood, because adapting doesn't always mean being authentic. Now you are an adult, functional, responsible, the one who keeps a cool head when everything gets complicated. When there is a crisis at work, they call you. When the family argues, you mediate. When a friend breaks down, you hold them up. Not because you asked for it, but because you have always been the one who doesn't lose control. But that strength comes at a silent cost. Hardly anyone asks if you're okay, because you always seem to be. You can listen to the deepest traumas of others, but rarely does anyone explore yours. You have learned to occupy the role of collective emotional regulator, while your own emotions remain in the background. Under intense stress, you don't explode. You shut down. You become flat, distant, emotionally hard to reach. From the outside, you seem incredibly serene. Inside, it can feel as if you were watching yourself from a distance. It is the same freeze response you learned years ago. Sometimes you don't even clearly remember certain critical moments. Not because you weren't there, but because your system decided to muffle the impact. Something disconcerting can also happen. You fail to cry when you think you should. During a loss, at a goodbye, in a painful moment, you think you should feel more, but a void appears. It's not coldness. It's a nervous system that learned to disconnect emotional intensity to stay stable. And when others interpret your calm as indifference, the wound is doubled. First, you had to learn to suppress what you felt. Later, you are judged for doing it too well. Asking for help can be uncomfortable, even threatening. You have been the strong one for so long that admitting fragility feels like a betrayal of your identity. Minimizing becomes automatic. I'm fine. It's nothing. I have it under control, even when it's not true. In relationships, another paradox can appear. What is stable and predictable sometimes feels strange, even boring. What is turbulent, unpredictable, and emotionally volatile feels familiar. Not because you want it consciously, but because your system recognizes that terrain. You know how to handle chaos. You learned how to do it since you were little. And perhaps the hardest part, when someone asks how you feel, your mind goes blank. You aren't hiding anything. You simply don't know how to identify it clearly. You can explain what you think, analyze the situation with impeccable logic, but naming what happens inside you is another story. Your calm does not mean an absence of emotion. It means that you process it in silence, without showing it, without sharing it. And what began as survival now defines the way you relate to the world. What you are experiencing isn't just psychological, it's biological. The amygdala, the brain's alarm system, learned early on to constantly scan the environment for emotional danger. Not physical danger, but subtle signals. A change in tone of voice, a different look, a silence that's too long. For your brain, unpredictability meant threat. That's why you developed a silent vigilance. Staying calm wasn't optional, it was preventive. If you remain stable, you reduce the risk of the situation escalating. At the same time, the prefrontal cortex, in charge of rational thinking and control, became extremely efficient. But instead of helping you process emotions, it learned to block them before they emerge. It intercepts the crying, it contains the rage, it silences the fear. That explains why you can act with clarity in moments that paralyze others. Your control system kicks in before the emotion becomes visible. However, when fighting or fleeing were not possible options in childhood, your nervous system adopted another strategy: immobilization. It is the state of being shut down. It's not panic, nor is it true calm. It is disconnection. In that state, the body reduces emotional intensity to survive. The stress response flattens. Cortisol can stay chronically elevated or, on the contrary, become unresponsive. The organism learns to ignore its own alarm. That is why you can go through objectively stressful situations without showing external signs of distress. It doesn't mean there is no impact. It means the impact occurs internally in a muffled way. Your body keeps a record of everything. Calm is not the absence of fear. It is fear managed in silence. But here a crucial point appears. The brain is not static. The neural networks that were formed out of necessity can be modified. Neuroplasticity allows the system to learn new responses. What was survival doesn't have to be a permanent sentence. Healing emotional hyperregulation doesn't mean stopping being strong. It means expanding your capacity to feel without that being perceived as danger. It's not a sudden change. It's a gradual process of retraining the nervous system. The first step is returning to the body. For years, you learned to ignore its signals. Now you need to listen to them. Notice the tension in your chest, the emptiness in your stomach, the heat in your face, without judging, just observing. Emotions live in the body before they become words. Then comes something apparently simple, but deeply challenging. Naming what you feel, not good or bad, but more precise nuances. Restless, overwhelmed, sad, irritated, confused. Naming things activates different brain circuits. What is named becomes processable. It is also essential to allow small emotional releases in safe contexts. If crying was dangerous in the past, your system needs to learn that it isn't now. At first, nothing might come up, or too much might come up. Both responses are normal. You are thawing an old mechanism. Another crucial part is co-regulation in adulthood. Letting someone else hold your vulnerability, sharing something real without minimizing it, resisting the urge to say everything is under control, feeling the discomfort of being seen without the armor of perfect calm. Finally, gently activating the nervous system helps to move out of the shutdown state. Intense physical movement, conscious breathing, sounds, bilateral stimulation. These aren't metaphors. They are physiological interventions that send a clear signal to the body. You are safe now. The healing doesn't make you fragile. It gives you back your range. It allows you to experience fear without disintegrating, sadness without collapsing, joy without guilt. You aren't learning to lose control. You're learning to feel without it meaning danger. If you've always been the calm person, the one who never falls apart, the one who holds everyone up, it's important that you understand something essential. Your calm was not the problem. It was the solution to an environment that demanded too much of you. You learned to stand firm because someone else couldn't. You learned to silence your emotions because expressing them wasn't safe. You learned to hold it all inside because losing control seemed to mean losing love, stability, belonging. And you survived. But surviving is not the same as living. Now, questioning that automatic calm is not weakness. It is courage. It is choosing to experience what you had to numb for years. It is allowing yourself to be human without the obligation of being unbreakable. You don't need to stop being strong. You just need to stop being invulnerable. Perhaps the true act of courage is not always keeping your composure, but allowing someone, for the first time, to see what you really feel. And understanding that feeling doesn't make you fragile. It makes you whole.